What's going on, guys? Dirtsheet clocking in here with Showtime from the Spoiler Alert Network. We are back with another top 5 discussion related to wrestling on our road to WrestleMania as the countdown continues. Today we are going to be talking about our top 5 favorite wrestling rivalries, and I'm really excited for this list. This is probably the one I'm looking forward to most out of all the top 5s we've done for wrestling so far. With that being said, the number 5 rivalry for me, it is Aleister Black and Buddy Murphy. And this rivalry is only like 2 or 3 matches into the rivalry so far, but every match has been gold. This rivalry is hard-hitting, it is entertaining, it is fast-paced, high-octane, nothing but strikes, and it's good. Everything about it is good for me. Aleister Black and Buddy Murphy are 2 of my favorite superstars on the roster right now, and seeing them in the ring together is just tremendous, and they put on A+ matches every time. That's why this one is my number 5. So, what's your number 5, Showtime?
My number 5 rivalry is Triple H and Shawn Michaels.
Oh, God.
It's a really good rivalry, probably deserves to be higher on my list, but the other 4 are just better. So this rivalry has been going on as a friends, as a rivalry, as back to friends, back to rivalries, back to friends. Now they're going head to head basically with the Worlds Collide because Triple H is the showrunner for NXT and Shawn Michaels is the showrunner for NXT UK. So Worlds Collide is like another installment of this rivalry.
Pretty much.
So Triple H and Shawn Michaels were basically the founding fathers of D-Generation X. Then Shawn Michaels got injured forever. And then he came back and they were like, oh, well, we're going to redo DX. And then Triple H was like, nope, hit you in the back with a sledgehammer, pedigree you, kill you, basically paralyze you forever. And this led to some of the best matches of the early 2000s between Triple H and Shawn Michaels, spanning from Shawn Michaels' return in 2002 all the way to WrestleMania 20, when the triple threat match with the guy who doesn't have a face, who actually won that match. And everything that happened in this rivalry was incredible. The whole storyline was intriguing, kept me invested as a younger lad 18 years ago. And Shawn Michaels was on, I'd say that was nearing the end of his career. Not really, because he went another 8 years after that, but he was older at the time, and just the fact that he was putting in these kinds of matches when he wasn't this young 20-year-old kid anymore, and he was still jumping off of ladders and elbow dropping and getting hit in the back with sledgehammers. And the work that he was putting in was incredible for somebody who was aging like he was.
Yeah. And
the storytelling in this rivalry was really what sold it for me. Because you got the whole backstory of them being best friends from the DX days all the way to hating each other's guts. And best friends always make great rivals. And that's why it's number 5 on my list. What do you got for number 4?
All right, now we're getting to the good ones. Number 4 on my top 5 favorite list of rivalries is the actually 3-way rivalry between tag teams. Edge and Christian, the Dudleys, the Hardy Brothers. This rivalry went on for, it felt like years. It seemed like every year at the pay-per-view events, they would have a TLC match, a ladders match, a tables match. These guys were always contending for the tag team titles, and occasionally there'd be a 4th team thrown in there, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the caliber of matches that these guys put on at the pay-per-views. I remember every match I thought someone died. Like Jeff Hardy.
Usually Jeff Hardy.
Yeah, usually Jeff Hardy diving off the top of a 30-foot ladder through 4 tables onto
Everything is not all right.
Bubba Ray, or getting speared above the ring, hanging from the titles.
Yep.
Like it was disgusting. It was a car crash every time these 6 men got in the ring together. And the concertos, this is where the concerto was born.
Yep.
When Edge and Christian were like, we're just gonna pancake your head between some steel chairs. You know, it's perfectly fine. We're just gonna do it.
It was
Not
the
even.
most devastating move at that time.
Yeah.
Before the punt kick.
Yeah, so it was this was a tremendous rivalry, and I really enjoyed every single match that they had. Normally the ladder matches, but nonetheless, every single match they did was great. Because the TLC match was born because of these guys.
Yep.
Because the Dudleys like tables, Edge and Christian enjoyed chairs, and the Hardys like ladders.
Yep.
So they were like, we're just going to take all three weapons that every one of these teams utilize and throw it in a match. And this was when TLC was good, before it was fucking dog shit. And now it's just tables, ladders, chairs, and whatever else. Dog
Stairs,
food,
dog
kendo
food.
sticks, ropes. It doesn't matter. And you don't even have to have a title now hung above the ring. You know, at least Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio had custody for a child hanging above the ring. But this was at the time when the TLC match was fresh. It was gold. It was good. It was great, and I loved it. And I want to go back because I hate it here. I'm sorry.
Not real.
I'm sorry. So what do you got for your number 4, Showtime?
My number 4 rivalry is The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Bing, 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 bing.
So this is a very good rivalry. It was great. They were the antithesis of each other. Rock was The Rock. He was the big guy. He was what the corporation wanted. And Steve Austin was the guy that the corporation hated because he stood
Yep.
against the corporation. And everything between these guys was always golden. They had great chemistry together. They had great matches. They had great storyline. It made you think that they hated each other. And they worked so well together that actually Stone Cold Steve Austin's last match was against The Rock
Yeah,
at
it was.
WrestleMania 19. They had WrestleMania 15, 17, and 19, where they had 3 of the best matches WrestleMania history. The 15 one isn't looked on so much as well, but the WrestleMania 17 is viewed as one of the best matches of all time, and WrestleMania 19 is only really overshadowed because of Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels. But the WrestleMania 19 match was Steve Austin's last match, and nobody knew that he was retiring at the time, but it still felt like a huge deal. And then when Steve Austin rode off into the sunset, that was it. And he ended it with The Rock, who was like,
Arguably where it all began for
Yeah.
rivalries.
yeah, Rock and Austin is the blueprint of a rivalry. That's what you want. You want to have somebody who's the polar opposite of you to show what you can do, to show what your character is. What do you got for number 3?
So my number 3 rivalry is Triple H and Randy Orton. And this rivalry was, at times, one of the ugliest rivalries that has ever been seen in the WWE. Now, it got so personal, it is absurd. This rivalry this was at the time whenever Randy Orton was the legend, I believe the Legend Killer, and he was at his most dangerous in my mind. And he tormented Triple H for pert near a year. It involved, he spiked DDT'd Stephanie McMahon, Triple H's wife, Vince McMahon, his father-in-law.
Yes.
Is that the correct term? Yeah, his father-in-law kissed Stephanie McMahon when she was unconscious in the ring while Triple H was handcuffed to the ropes.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
To do that.
And then Triple H broke into Randy Orton's house and threw him through his own living room window. It just got really personal.
Sure did.
And it all accumulated with this huge match at WrestleMania. It was at WrestleMania, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
25?
And they had so many matches during this rivalry. They had last man standing matches, no disqualification matches. They would just beat the hell out of each other in each other's matches all the time. Like it got to the point where you didn't see one around without the other lurking. And that is a good rivalry. Whenever you have one of the superstars in the rivalry constantly looking over their shoulder and looking, being paranoid, looking for you, that's how you know it's a good rivalry. And they did this for a year, and it was tremendous, and I loved every second of it. What do you got for your number 3, Showtime?
My number 3 rivalry is Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle. This is from the time period around the time of WrestleMania 19, leading into that with Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle for the WWE Championship. They had segments backstage where they would have competitions to see who could do the most push-ups or setups or just weird. But then their matches were insane. They had an hour-long Iron Man match on SmackDown. 2003. One of the best matches I've ever seen in my entire life. It was incredible. It's still incredible now. It was the first thing that I went back and watched on WWE Network back in 2014 when that was released. The very first thing I went back and watched was an Iron Man match between Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle. And it still holds up. And their match at WrestleMania 19 is one of the best matches I've ever seen. And that's the same match where Brock Lesnar did the shooting star press and fell
and died.
Damn near died.
Yep.
And Kurt Angle, and I think he still won that match, didn't he?
Brock?
Yeah.
I want to say he did.
I'm pretty sure he finished the match. He fell on his head after falling off the top rope, doing a little flipper-do, and damn near died.
Yep.
Still finished the match, and it was incredible. And then just everything that happened in this rivalry just got so real, and it started off like a little professional rivalry about who was a better athlete or who was a better amateur wrestler, and it just got worse and worse and worse, but better and better and better, and it led to their match at WrestleMania 19, which was incredible. What do you got for your number 2?
So my number 2 is actually Showtime's number 345 on his list. I can't remember which one it was, but it is The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And this was the rivalry that got me into wrestling as a kid, was Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. And I felt like it just never ended. From the moment it started, like Showtime said, all the way up until Stone Cold Steve Austin's retirement match, this rivalry never stopped. They just, it was natural. The chemistry they had was natural. And a good rivalry has you believing that the people involved in it really despise each other, and I believed as a kid that The Rock and Stone Cold hated each other. Rock would say just the worst things about Stone Cold Steve Austin. I remember him constantly calling Stone Cold Steve Austin a piece of trailer park trash. I was like, you can't say things like that on TV. That's not okay. And it just escalated as the years went, and they had the 3 tremendous matches at WrestleMania. They had matches all over the place at different pay-per-views as well, and I still think to this day my favorite segment with them is Stone Cold Steve Austin throwing the title over the bridge into the river, and then The Rock throwing Stone Cold Steve Austin over the bridge into the river. It was so over the top and so goofy, but it was so good, and I loved every second of it. Who's your number 2, Showtime?
My number 2 rivalry started in 2011 at WrestleMania 27. The Rock was the host of WrestleMania, and he interjected himself in the match between John Cena and The Miz. This began the feud between The Rock and John Cena.
Oh God. Which
was incredible. Incredible promos. They had The Rock's first match in years was The Rock and John Cena versus The Miz and R-Truth. It was an amazing match. It was in Madison Square Garden. Survivor Series 2011. Same night that started CM Punk's year-long title reign. 434 days.
Just an all-around good year for... that was just a good night for wrestling.
Yeah. And it happened in Madison Square Garden, which is which is wrestling. Madison Square Garden is wrestling. But this tag match was great. You could see that The Rock hadn't lost a step. He was doing great. He had all of his signature mannerisms. He could still go in the ring. We were worried that he was going to show up and he was just going to be in jeans and a t-shirt and he was just going to half-ass it, but the match was great. End of the match happened, and it just furthered the battle between Rock and Cena, which was leading in to WrestleMania 28, which this match was announced a year in advance.
Yeah.
The night after WrestleMania 27, it was announced that The Rock was going to challenge John Cena at WrestleMania 28. And the build to this match, the promos, the rap battles,
a year long.
Yeah.
They built for this match.
Yeah. And it was... So, a little bit of a spoiler for an upcoming video at some point. The Rock versus John Cena at WrestleMania 28 is my favorite match of all time. I'm sure whenever we do a top 5 favorite matches, that's going to be my number 1. That's never changed. That happened 8 years ago, and it's still my favorite match of all time. And the rivalry that happened leading up to the match was amazing. Like I said, promos, tag matches, that's pretty much it. because The Rock wasn't going to get in the ring more than he had to. And Cena basically carried this feud on his back. Week after week, he showed up and he talked about The Rock, talked about how he wasn't here, talked about how he says that this is his home, but he's over in Hollywood doing what he does. And it just turned Rock into a heel for me. I was cheering for Cena in this match. And it was a great chance to see two generations collide.
The faces of two generations.
Yeah, the faces of two generations colliding at WrestleMania 28 was amazing. And seeing The Rock win that match was bad for me. I wanted Cena to win. It didn't do Rock any good. He was just going to have this one match and then go back to Hollywood. Cena's the one that was going to look like ass for losing against a guy who has had one match in the past 9 years at that point. And then this led into WrestleMania 29, where they had once in a lifetime twice. And the second match was but the first match, the build to it was incredible. And I loved it. I loved every moment of it. It's one of the best rivalries I've ever seen. And they could pick it back up tomorrow, and I'd be down to see it again for 3 times in a lifetime. And that's my number 2. What you got for number 1?
So my number 1 is probably going to be my favorite rivalry for all of fake time, because time is fake. But I really don't think we will ever see a rivalry that is better than this one, even with how recent it is. Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano is the rivalry of all rivalries for me. Happened on NXT for over a year. Ciampa even got hurt and came back and they resumed. These guys work so well together. I remember from the moment it started, from Tommaso Ciampa smashing Johnny Gargano into the LED board after they lost to AOP as DIY. And then from there, it just sent both of them on an upward trajectory in singles competition. Johnny Gargano was wounded. He was hurt. You know, that's his best friend. And Tommaso Ciampa just didn't fucking care. He was just selfish and all on his own. He became known as the scourge of NXT. And like Showtime has said, in other top 5s, there was the "you bald chants ringing through Full Sail. This elevated them both to different levels. And the matches they had were amazing. I remember they main evented like 4 straight takeovers. Yeah. And this is not an easy thing to do. It's not easy to keep a rivalry that fresh, because the takeovers are quarterly. They happen at all the big events. It's not like a pay-per-view like for WWE that happens every month. These only happen every couple of months. And Ciampa and Gargano main evented all of them. They had the street fight. They had the unsanctioned match whenever Ciampa came back. And it was ugly. Every single match. These guys, I remember Ciampa peeling the apron off the ring, the apron cover, and just exposing the hardwood underneath. DDTing Johnny Gargano on it. Ciampa won this match with his hands cuffed. Yep. His hands were cuffed. And this man won. He Rhea Ripley'd before it was cool. And it was an amazing rivalry, and I loved every single match that they had. The unsanctioned match was great. Whenever Johnny Gargano used the knee brace of Tommaso Ciampa and wrapped it around his face and then locked in the Gargano escape, it was amazing. Every single match they had was great. Tommaso Ciampa ended up with the NXT Championship at some point, which I never thought would ever happen, and then they feuded for the belt. It was just amazing, and I loved every second of this rivalry. Now, it is time for Showtime's number 1.
My number 1 is the same rivalry.
Bam!
Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano. Everything the Dirt Sheet said, and then more. Specifically, the moment at the end of currently the more recent end of their rivalry, because I feel like they're going to pick it back up at some point.
Have to.
Or Last Man Standing.
The
Last Man Standing match, where Johnny Gargano basically gave up his morals.
Yeah, he did.
And he, instead of beating Ciampa, he wanted to end him. So he took off his knee brace. He wanted to
kill this man.
Took off his knee brace and went to just knee Ciampa in the dome and just tore his own shit up and couldn't get up, and he lost the match. And he lost because of his own selfish desires to end Ciampa. And just the fact that this rivalry changed Johnny Gargano to that point that he was willing.
Was that the same match where afterwards he air raid crashed Ciampa off of the stage through 2 tables?
That could be.
I feel like that's the same match because I remember when Gargano did that, he didn't win the match that he was in.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember him doing it afterwards with this just blank, emotionless look on his face, like he didn't care. And that's not Johnny Gargano.
Yeah.
That is not Johnny Wrestling. That was something else.
Yeah.
That wanted to maim Tommaso Ciampa.
Yeah. The point there was that the rivalry just changed Gargano as a person. He was the heart and soul of NXT, and then this rivalry changed him to be something darker, something that just doesn't care, just wants to hurt Tommaso Ciampa for what he put him through in this rivalry. From the just betrayal of their original friendship, their tag team together, the betrayal, and then just the over a year of just tormenting, rivaling, hurting, just over a year of being at each other's throats, just changed Gargano into a darker person. And it was a great character arc for Johnny, and it was a great character arc for Ciampa, and it led, like you said, to Ciampa being the NXT champion, and then eventually having the neck injury and having to give up the title, which led to Adam Cole versus Johnny Gargano for the vacant NXT title, which Gargano won, which was a huge moment. For me, it was an emotional moment. I don't get emotional a whole lot for wrestling anymore, but that moment was emotional for me.
The entire segment of that last fall, him fighting off all of the members of the UE outside the ring, was an amazing match. Probably one of my favorite matches to ever match.
It was probably a little bit overbooked for how much Johnny went through in that match. He had a little bit of the plot armor, as they call it, where he's just been built up too strong to lose. But at that point, it just felt right to me. I enjoyed it a lot, and seeing Gargano finally get his due in that match was great. And then he lost it back to Adam Cole, but that doesn't matter anymore.
You know, one more thing about the rivalry was, you know how I know it was so good is to start this rivalry, there wasn't a belt involved. These guys just hated each other and wanted to tear each other apart for what happened when Ciampa betrayed Gargano. There was the NXT championship was never involved until like halfway through this rivalry. When it started, they were just beating the shit out of each other.
Overshadowing the champion. At the time, was it Andrade?
Yeah.
And then Aleister Black?
Andrade or Aleister Black were opening the show, defending the title, and then Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa were main eventing the show in a grudge match.
Yep.
Or like the unsanctioned match, it was unsanctioned because NXT wanted nothing to do with the fallout of what happened with Tommaso Ciampa and Gargano, story-wise. They didn't want to be involved because they knew these guys just wanted to hurt each other.
Yep. It was the best rivalry going, best rivalry of all time, and I don't think it'll ever be topped. It's already better than the similar rivalries of the past, like Shawn Michaels and Triple H, how it started as a friendship and it just led to a blood feud. This is similar in that same vein, but it's already so much better, and it's just gonna get better if they keep building it. And that's why it's my number one. That's why it's his number one.
That's why it should be your number one.
It should be your number one. I don't know why it's not.
If it's not, dumb.
The only reason it's not your number one is if you haven't seen it.
Watch it. It's on the WWE Network. Literally, everything, every match. Just do what I did, what this guy got me to do. Go and watch all the takeovers from the very first one, all the way up until the most recent one, and you'll be completely caught up. You can do it in like a month. I did it in like a month. I watched like 2 takeovers a night. It was like 2 years of wrestling in a month. Okay, maybe you can't do it as quick as I did, but you can try. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us again for another Top 5 discussion. Get in the comments. Let us know your guys' favorite rivalries in wrestling. They don't have to be just in WWE. I'm sure there's some we didn't touch on. There's so many great rivalries that narrowing it down to 5 is really hard to do. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the PWT store. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yep.
Okay. Showtime. I'm Dirtsheet. We are the Spoiler Alert Network, and remember to stay dedicated.